There is another way of taking the gauges off the system, and it's called bleeding through the manifold. Now either way, you want to make sure there's no contamination. The first way, we took the low side off, took the high side, put it on the low side, and it bled the refrigerant back in. Zero contamination to the system. Zero moisture, zero mixtures. It's an easy, simple way. Now this other way is a little bit different. If we're going to bleed the refrigerant through the manifold, that means we're going to go from the high side across the manifold into the low side. But right now in the system, I have in between here air, dirty, nasty, polluted air. Inside of this yellow hose is contaminants. Maybe it's some other refrigerant. Maybe it's like right now, it's just full of air and moisture and all kinds of bad stuff. So if we're going to bleed across the manifold, we must first take this yellow hose off. Now there's some people that say you can purge that yellow hose, and it's true, but here we have a low loss fitting that we can't purge. So if I wanted to purge, I would have to swap these hoses around and put the low loss fitting on this side and then purge it out of this side, and I still have an issue of contaminants. So an easier way to purge across the manifold is to take that center hose off. Take one of your valve caps with an O-ring, loosely put it on the bottom. Now I'm going to open the low side so that only low pressure vapor comes out, and I'm pushing low pressure vapor out of this port. Now I'm going to slowly tighten it up. Now it's now purged. With refrigerant, I've pushed the air out of this port. It's not a great purge because I still have some contaminants on this side. There is still an issue and a potential for contaminants, but we're for the most part clean. So what I'm going to do now is take the high side off first. 2 fingers so I don't get burned. Certainly need to fix that connection. This line has liquid refrigerant in it. I cannot vent this because that little bit that came out would have been 30 or 40 times as much in this hose. So I got to get the liquid back in. Now my preference is to put it right back on the suction side. It bleeds it right into the system. But a lot of technicians like to do the bleeding across the manifold method. So I'm going to show you the right way. We already purged this. What I'm going to do is open the middle hose to the center. So this pressure is the same in the center. This side is higher pressure. As I open this valve, we're going to let the refrigerant run across the manifold and into the suction side. So I'm going to open this up, and you can see the refrigerant come across. But also I have to raise this hose up. Then we're going to raise this hose up and allow gravity to let that liquid refrigerant flow all the way down and back into that suction side. This puts the refrigerant back into the system. Now I can take the suction side port off. While this is still open, I can loosen this and I can vent out that de minimis amount of refrigerant from both hoses. Make sure my cap is on. Then I'm going to take my other port off. Make sure the cap is on. Now I can put my high side port hose back on its holding port, put my low side back on its holding port. I can then reattach my middle hose, my service hose, and then I can reattach its holding port as well. Want to make sure that I close my valves for the next service that I use. I don't have to worry about them bleeding across by accident. Now I don't have any refrigerant in my gauges. I didn't lose any refrigerant for the most part back in my system, and the system's ready to go. This is also why I like to use the probes, because if you use the probes, you don't have to worry about that loss of refrigerant. For example, if I'm putting my gauge on and take this off, I don't have to worry about venting anything at all. No loss of refrigerant.